Before you reach for that bottle of castor oil, you might want to watch this. If you're planning a true natural birth, then you need to know that the very things that you've been taught to do to have a natural birth, prepare your body for a natural birth, or to otherwise get things moving at the end of your pregnancy can actually sabotage your true natural birth. In fact, it can undermine your confidence, cause you to give in to medical pressure for interventions that you don't actually want or need, and also sabotage your true natural birth. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth series where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered true natural birth. And in this part of the series, we are talking about the natural birth traps. Natural birth trap number 6, castor oil. For the full list, make sure you go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies for the natural birth traps guide, as well as other lists of things that you want to avoid, mistakes that you're making when trying to plan a natural birth, misconceptions that you may have that are actually sabotaging you, and the red flags that you want to watch out for in a care provider, including the one where they basically pressure you to go into labor by some arbitrary due date just so you don't go overdue. I'm going to be addressing all of this inside of the Empowered Birth series. And I also just want to let you know that this is a masterclass. That means that unlike typical fluff videos where I basically would tell you what castor oil does and why you don't want to use it, instead, I'm going to give you the roadmap to empowered birth. Because sometimes you might want to use castor oil, and I'm going to tell you a story of a client of mine who did this. And I'm also going to share that you really don't want to do this unless you are going for your backup plan. Because the aim of the empowered birth method is we aim for a true natural birth, the physiological process that is undisturbed, and then we pull back only as much as needed. And sometimes it can be appropriate to use castor oil and other times it's not. But as I said, this is a deep dive masterclass. That means unlike typical videos where you only get a little bit of information, I am going to tell you right now that the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasure that you're going to uncover. So if you check the description of this video, if you happen to be on YouTube right now, then what you're going to see is that I've also included a transcript of the actual video. Now, this transcript, I have basically highlighted the key pieces by doing bold text. I also have the blue text to highlight the main points of what you would want to take away. So you can skim. I know that sometimes you don't have a lot of time to be able to go through an entire transcript or even to watch the full video. But here's why you want to watch from beginning to end. As I said, I'm laying this out so that you have the actual map, because I'm committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me directly or not, and whether you buy any of my courses and get the self-study VIP, which I'll talk about later in this, to tell you about your steps of getting the empowered birth method. But this one is path number 1, the do-it-yourself. And with do-it-yourself, you're going to want to be able to take notes. So make sure that you have no distractions right now, or save this video for later, grab the transcript so that you can kind of see the highlights of what this training is about. And then you can be like, oh, this is what I want to go back to and watch later. Or you can click the links inside of the actual transcript, and that will give you the extras. Because, instead of bogging you down with all of the stats and information, which I noticed when I was a birth advocate was starting to get moms to the point where it's like, this is too much for me right now. I can't really make sense of this. And you go into the mom groups and you tend to find the same thing, especially when it comes to induction or castor oil or the idea of going overdue versus actually getting things moving. And I want to be able to make sure that you have those resources. So you're not sifting through a bunch of mom groups that are going to shame you. So you're not trying to Google a whole bunch of things and getting the wrong information. Because here at Empowering Mom's Birth, I believe that you are your own best expert. So here's the thing that's different about these master classes is that you really need to watch from beginning to end. And you also are going to want to take notes. You might also want to take advantage of the rule of three, and I will tell you more about that near the end after we go through the main structure. But the structure is simple. First, I'm going to tell you about what a natural birth trap is and the overview of true natural birth. If you want a deeper dive, you can go into the start guide on my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. But the basics of that is I'm basically going to tell you, here's what natural birth is, and here is what natural birth perpetuated by the medical system and our birth culture is that is leading you into these natural birth traps. Then I'm going to go into a little bit of a story of how castor oil actually sabotages your natural birth or makes it more painful, traumatic, or otherwise it's not the true natural birth experience. But if you go in with that knowledge, then you can also make a plan around that. So I'm going to share a story of a client of mine who didn't have a true natural birth. However, she did avoid the C-section that she didn't actually want. And by choosing to use castor oil and get her labor started, that was actually a more empowering decision for her because she was just done waiting to go back into labor and she really wanted to have her VBAC, and she did achieve that. But it's not without its risks, and I am going to address that as well. I'm also going to then tell you about how it undermines your confidence, how it sabotages you and leads to that medical pressure to keep getting things going, and also how this overall sabotages your physiological process. Then after that, I'm going to go into what you really want to know when it comes to choosing castor oil, if that is in your backup plan. And of course, if you want to go into the transcript of this video, then you're also going to be able to get the actual information, the details, the references that I pull out, and then you can continue to go down that rabbit hole. Because if you go into the rabbit hole, into your wonderland, all ways are the queen's way, and you are an empowered birth queen. That means that you get to make the decisions. You get to decide in your own intuition what is right for you, trust your instincts, and then use the medical system as backup. Again, aim for a true natural birth and pull back only as much as needed. Once you understand the basics of having a natural birth versus having castor oil introduced into your birth plan, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how this applies within the empowered birth method itself. Because if you are doing the do-it-yourself path, then you do not have any additional guidance. And I want to make sure that even if you could never get on a call with me or one of my team members, or for whatever reason you couldn't get access to a course, but you know, most of my stuff is free. I'm just going to let you know that. And it's called the self-study path. I'll tell you more about that later. But even if you didn't take that path, if you are a do-it-yourselfer, if you're someone who lights up at the idea of just figuring it out all on your own and piecing together your own map, then I'm going to give you a scavenger hunt. I'm going to let you have all of the treasures. Think of it like your own personal RPG video game or adventure. You choose your own adventure where you can just uncover those little pieces of treasure that other people might overlook, or it might not work for their journey, but it's exactly what you need in the moment. And if you do have any questions or you have any concerns about what else you might be dealing with, you can always reach out to the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And I'm also going to mention that if you ask questions directly into the comments of the video, we do not always get back to you in time. So there are moms that sometimes ask questions and we don't see them for 11 months because we are so focused on doing everything else that we are doing for the empowered birth movement that we can't get back to you that way. So if your question is actually urgent and it's time sensitive, please reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Either myself or one of my team members will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days if you are not a subscriber to the newsletter. If you are, then your path is to hit reply to any one of the weekly emails that come into your inbox. And then that way we know that you are priority, and then you get help within 1 to 2 business days. you get even more support if you're self-study VIP. And if you are a high-level premium client, I mean, you basically have us on WhatsApp. You have access to me at a higher level because information is free and I only charge for access to me. So again, make sure that you have time to sit down and do this deep dive masterclass. I do one per week. I drop these videos. So this is basically like an ongoing course where you can just keep coming in and getting more resources and get more information, go through the transcript, and make sure you take advantage of the rule of 3, which I will then talk about at the end after telling you about the empowered birth method. And I'm also going to tell you about additional resources, little hidden secrets on birth advocacy and why things are the way they are, so that you get to be an empowered mom for life. Because when you're an empowered mom for life, no one can take your power away from you again. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to get into this. As I said, this is the Natural Birth Trap series. So if you want the full list of what's coming up, make sure you get that guide. The link is inside of the description of this video. And make sure you also check out that transcript. Okay, so why is castor oil a natural birth trap? Well, first of all, you need to understand what castor oil does. Castor oil basically is meant to irritate the bowels. So when you're thinking about that, it's irritating your intestines and it's causing the uterine cramping. And if your baby is actually ready to come, this is important, then that concoction of castor oil mixed with whatever other things that they want to put in. Ina May Gaskin even talks about just having castor oil mixed in with scrambled eggs, which I'm still thinking not exactly appetizing. However, this is the idea if you really want to get things going. And if your body is already primed to go into labor, then this can stimulate your bowels. And then those cramping contractions from that process, I don't really think I have to tell you what you're going to be doing if you have castor oil. It's going to start the process of labor at the same time. But let me just be clear. You're going to have a bad time. It's going to be messy. It's going to cause you to feel a lot of nausea too. So I don't really recommend doing this unless you feel that you are completely out of options and you really want to do this and you've made a conscious choice. And we will be talking about that later. There are also some other resources that you're going to want to take advantage of to understand more about castor oil. And I will be putting those inside of the transcript. Okay, so let me just tell you the story of this client. And I'm going to call her Dee Dee for the purposes, names have been changed, but she basically had decided that she wasn't going to have another C-section. She had been so screwed over by the medical system, and they had put so much pressure on her to schedule this C-section. And using what I taught her with the birth advocacy tools and everything, as one of my clients, she had basically come to me 6 weeks before she was ready to go into labor. And she's like, I don't want to have another C-section, but they say that they're not going to take any of the research from the States because she was in another country to justify me being able to have a VBAC 3C. And I told her, it's like, okay, so they're not actually going to look at the actual research to say that this is safe. And they're automatically saying that you have one contraction and that's it, uterine rupture. And she's like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, okay. Well, I can see that we're dealing with somebody who doesn't even understand how natural birth works, because the fact is that if you don't induce and you don't have a C-section, eventually you will go into labor and you will birth your baby. This is something that the medical system has forgotten. And there's a reason they've forgotten that. And I do suggest that you check out Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as the Rite of Passage. It's the little red book behind me. It's one of my favorites. If you've been following me for a while, you probably have seen me hold that up quite a bit. It is one of my top 15 books that I recommend. If you want to know about the rest of the books that I really find helpful for natural birth as well as breastfeeding, then you're going to want to check out another video in my Empowered Birth series on the top 15 books that I basically recommend. And again, the link is inside of the transcript of this video. So recognizing that she's basically trying to avoid the C-section. She didn't necessarily want to have an unassisted birth. And she felt backed into a corner. And this is not okay. She deserved to be able to have a natural birth within the medical system and feel safe to do so. She should not have had to fight, beg, compromise within the system. But what happened over the course of her labor is that things got really hard for Dee Dee. And Dee Dee was starting to feel defeated. I could see that she really didn't want to have to keep going into this labor process. It was a lot for her. And even her partner started to recognize like she needs to have something to relieve this pain. Like she's really needing something. And you know, that's sometimes okay. Just because you're aiming for a true natural birth doesn't necessarily mean that that is right for you. And I want to be quite clear on that, that you are less likely to have complications come up if you have a true natural birth. However, you are your own best expert and you get to decide when you call in those interventions. So there got to be a point while Dee Dee was in the pool and I was with her, like virtually with her because overseas, but I'm watching her and I can see that she's really not feeling comfortable being home. It's too stressful with their boys running around, and she would probably rather be in the hospital at this point. She just doesn't have the right support in that hospital. And she also knew that she'd have to go in and her partner would need to stay home to find somebody to look after their boys. But there came a point where Dee Dee is just like, I really want to get checked out. I don't feel safe here anymore. I really do want somebody to assess me. And maybe I'd like to also be able to rest. And so I'm like, Dee Dee, what's your intuition telling you right now? And she's like, I want to go to the hospital. I want to get checked out. And I'm like, okay, well, then we're going to put that plan in place. It's okay. You didn't fail. Like, Dee Dee, you didn't fail. You got to go into labor on your own. You got to experience that. Nobody touched you. Nobody manipulated you. You got to experience that. And that's the important thing is you now have a choice to go in. And she chose to go in. But because Dee Dee had all of her power, she then was able to be like, you know what? Not only do I have a choice, but I can feel strong in my convictions that I'm not having a C-section. I'm coming in to get assessed to see where my baby is at. And if I don't feel that there's imminent danger, I'm not having a C-section. Now, if I need to rest, then I'm going to do that. Now, again, Dee Dee also wanted to go home after she was assessed and she realized everything was fine. The medical system detained her. So Dee Dee was now feeling very stressed. And this is why I say that we need to get the category 5s out of the medical system and we need to start teaching the truly aligned birth workers that birth doesn't have to be this scary and traumatic and pathologized thing, and that they can actually take their hands off of it. So this is part of what the Empowered Birth movement aims to do, is to allow moms to have physiological births, not just unassisted at home, but also home births with midwives, and the midwives learn to sit on their hands. And then they can also have unassisted births in the hospital, and then the medical staff can now see what physiological birth looks like. If you are no longer afraid of it, then you can actually facilitate it. But right now they can't facilitate it. And so Dee Dee at that point was thinking, you know what? I kind of am tired of labor being stalled out. I want to get things going. And she let me know through text through WhatsApp, and she's like, I'm going to do the castor oil. And I know what you said about it being a natural birth trap, because Dee Dee had my list of natural birth traps. She had everything. When I work with a client, I don't just sit there and coach them. I also give them access to my entire library so that they can go through at their own pace. They can do any self-study courses. And then they're also resourced to be able to come on to those calls with me or send me a text. And we're able to do the back and forth support and interactions where I'm basically like, yes, and check out this resource if you want to know more. And then they go and do that. So my clients are the ones that are doing the work. My clients are the ones that are basically going beyond just what I tell them. Like, I didn't tell Dee Dee to tell her care provider that she was pushing her C-section up to 42 weeks. Dee Dee did that all on her own to buy herself more time, because I had explained to her about how the system actually was trying to get her in the door for their own schedule. And she's like, but that doesn't give me enough time to go into labor on my own. I'm like, I know. And she's like, well, I'm going to buy myself more time. And so she used those skills. And on our next call, she had told me that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, Dee Dee, you just totally owned the game. You took what I told you and you made it your own. Like, rock on, queen. Like, you did it. And then the same thing with her partner. I train up the partners as well to be that support, because I can't be there the whole time, but the partner can. So understanding that Dee Dee had these tools in her tool belt, and she was also thinking, I'm going to go with castor oil, and that's not going to give me my true natural birth. But I was never really wanting just the true natural birth. I wanted to avoid the C-section. Aim for true natural birth, pull back only as much as needed. Dee Dee recognized she wanted to go back into labor. She used the castor oil. This then led to a lot more cramping and pain. She chose to get the epidural, and she still had her VBAC. There were still elements that could have gone better, and that wasn't Dee Dee's fault. And she didn't internalize that as a failure on her part, but instead recognizing that this is what the medical system does. And the same thing with another mom that I had supported, Lisa. You can read a little bit of her story inside Your Empowered Birth. But Lisa had also been pushed into going to the hospital by her family. And this all ties in to my empowered birth methods, so stay tuned. Okay, so now you understand Dee Dee had her VBAC after 3 cesareans because she was able to get her labor started with castor oil. Castor oil on its own is not a natural birth trap. So how is it a natural birth trap? Because if it's okay within that context, then it should be okay for anything, right? No. Because again, Dee Dee's case was individual based on her own needs and her own intuition and what she wanted to call in. You may have a completely different map and a different experience than what Dee Dee had. Birth is not one size fits all, and it's time that we stop pitting the medical system and the natural birth community against each other, and instead recognizing that you need to have both. You need to understand physiological birth, the true natural birth, which very few people actually know. And you also need to see where the medical system actually has some wisdom and then where they're missing it. Because the medical system side of things, they don't actually see physiological birth. It has basically been wiped out of extinction. And then our overall birth culture has basically reinforced this message that our bodies are broken and defective, and that the medical system is the white coat saviors, and that moms who choose to free birth or otherwise not go in for those medical interventions are somehow being reckless and not thinking about their baby. When in truth, we're just trying to get our autonomy, right? You just want to be able to birth your baby without anybody else trying to scare you and talk you into things that you don't want or need. And so the thing about castor oil by itself is that when you're in the mom groups and you're thinking that you don't go into labor on your own and you use castor oil, this undermines your confidence, first of all, because now you think that you have to have this thing in order to go into labor on your own. You don't. you will eventually go into labor on your own. However, if you wanted to get things moving, then you need to recognize that castor oil, while it's technically a natural method, it is still pushing on the outside to get your body to do something that it was not ready to do. When you rush a physiological process, what this does is it then gets to be more painful, and it might not even work. And then if it doesn't work, you're going to think, well, I even did castor oil and all I did was have a really bad couple of days and nothing happened. Now, how this can also lead to medical intervention is that castor oil does not just affect you. It also is transferring into your placenta and the bloodstream, and it's getting to your baby. So guess whose bowels are also going to be irritated? Yeah, I'm sorry. Your baby is also going to have a tummy ache. It's not going to be fun for them. And at the same time, this then can also lead to them passing meconium. If your waters release and there is meconium in the waters from you having castor oil, this is then going to cause the medical system to panic, especially if you're not far enough into your labor and they're going to keep pushing Pitocin and other things to get things going. This can also lead to complications of your baby inhaling that meconium. So you need to recognize that by doing castor oil, you really don't want to do this if you have not gone into labor at all. If labor has not started and you use castor oil, this can cause your body to basically freak out, your baby to freak out, and your birth is just going to go sideways because baby wasn't ready yet. But if you were already going in and out of labor and you were already in established labor and things just stopped for whatever reason, maybe you needed a rest and you're like, you know what? I kind of want things to get going now. And I'm recognizing that the environment that I'm in isn't very safe for me to go in on my own. So I'm just going to do a little jump start to get things going. Then that is appropriate. And that's what Dee Dee chose to do. She was weighing the pros and cons of staying with a stalled labor in the hospital when the medical system was not going to let her leave versus basically just jump starting it so that she could go home. And Dee Dee's like, I'm going home. So that's why she chose that. So you need to understand that if castor oil is introduced, this can then lead to more medical interventions because now the medical system is freaking out on you because you've gone into labor, but nothing seems to be happening or the baby has passed meconium. And finally, the last thing, how it sabotages you, I kind of already touched on that by saying that if you're using castor oil because you think you have to go into labor by a certain point, or because you're trying to avoid an induction that has been scheduled that you don't actually want to do, this is also leading you to having a really bad time. This isn't the gentle, calming process that you wanted to do. This isn't the dream birth. This is now interfering on the outside to speed things up and get baby out. And that can cause all kinds of problems. So recognizing you need to basically be weighing, is it worth it to do this or not? Okay, so I'm also going to touch on something else here because this is kind of relevant and it's called the Birth Advocacy Report. You can go onto my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit, and you can get the Birth Advocacy Report in there, or you can get it within your Empowered Birth Workshop. It comes through the email. And this report basically has 5 things that you need to know about the medical system in basically understanding what Dee Dee understood and what Jenny and all of my clients have understood, which is that the medical system has 5 main fears and resistance points as to why they will not support you properly when you want to have a physiological birth or to not go into labor by a set point. And the first one, of course, is that they're afraid of something going wrong. If you don't go into labor by a certain point or your labor doesn't progress at a certain point, they have basically been trained that birth needs to be efficient to be safe. Now, this is, of course, the complete opposite of what is physiological birth, because physiological birth is not linear. But because of the way that they have been trained and all they see is pathology, all they see is things going wrong, they are now internalizing that as birth goes wrong. Fish can't see the water they swim in. The next one is they are afraid of going outside the box. If they've never practiced that way or never had a client who asked for that, and most of their clients induce, and they don't know how to have those skills to sit on their hands and just trust the process because they're afraid, then this can also lead to resistance. That is where your backup plans come in very handy. That is what Jenny did, is she understood the care provider had never attended a birth like that. Same with Dee Dee. They'd never attended a VBAC 3C. They were so convinced that one contraction was going to lead to catastrophic outcome because all they could see was pathology and they were worrying about what might possibly maybe happen. Another layer of this is category 3, which is basically they are afraid of being the ringleader or getting in trouble. So afraid of getting in trouble is that they are basically thinking, if I don't do it the way that the book says I need to do it, I'm going against the policies and procedures of my place of work, my institution, and either the insurance companies are going to come down on me and they're going to raise my rates, or this could become a lawsuit, or I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get in trouble. And they're worried about their own personal livelihood, which makes sense again. And then we have category 4, which is afraid of being seen as the ringleader. They gave you the idea. So now they are liable because they went against the institution and they told you something they shouldn't have told you. And now you're making a decision that's going against everything that they wanted you to do. Like the medical system is like, you must have told them this. And you're now saying something that's wrong, and we're going to take your license or we're going to otherwise get you in trouble for doing this. And then if others are also around you, other colleagues that agree with you, you have now become basically the ringleader, and they're going to try to make an example of you. So recognizing what they're dealing with. There's also category 5. Category 5s are what we need to get out of the medical system. And this is, again, why castor oil is not a solution to avoiding an induction. Castor oil should not be used as the solution to avoid a forced induction or a coerced induction or a pressured induction. The solution to a pressured induction is to release your fears. And I have a system around that too. Go check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge if you want to really release your fears. And I also talk about this inside module 1 of your Empowered Birth workshop. Is you need to basically get rid of those buttons that the medical system likes to push on you. Category 5s love to push those buttons. Category 5s are all about withholding information that you otherwise would have made a different choice had you known it, such as telling you that the stillbirth rate goes up if you happen to be 40, and it increases exponentially, as they say. But really, the numbers are a lot smaller than you would think. In fact, if you read Dr. Sarah Wickham's book, In Your Own Time, there is a section on advanced maternal age, and it happens to tell you about the stats, and it's still less than 1% for stillbirth, for just going past your due date and being 40 years old. So, when the medical system says, well, we have to induce you by 39 weeks because that's what the recommendations say, and if you don't, you're going to have a stillbirth, then that puts fear on you. Might, possibly, maybe happen. Go and check out some of my other videos on risk and assessing your alternatives and your options and birth advocacy. It's inside the first half of the Empowered Birth series, the 26 things that you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth. And again, if you go into the transcript, you can go and get that link right now. So that is another video that you are going to want to watch if you are doing the do-it-yourself path. If you happen to be on the self-study, then there's a module on birth advocacy within your Empowered Birth Academy, and there's a little bit inside of your Empowered Birth Workshop, which is the free self-study path. So understanding that if a category 5 is really trying to scare you, they're going to find every single button and they're going to be like, your baby could die. Nope, that's not working. Well, let's see what else. Oh, we'll call CPS on you. Huh, that's not working either. We won't deliver your baby. Huh, none of these buttons seem to be working. Why is this button not working? I have pushed these buttons so many times and they usually work on moms. What is going on? You know what's going on? You're an empowered birth queen. You're an empowered mom for life. Nobody can take your power away from you again. And the reason they can't is because I am giving you the secret to getting rid of the category 5s. Secret number 1 is you don't work with them at all. You find the ways of pulling off the mask. Go check out some of my other videos on finding an aligned care provider. And then in addition to that, if you have no choice and you have to work with them, there are ways to put distance between you and them, as well as to maintain your power, no matter how many buttons they try to push on you. And that is where the Empowered Birth Method really comes in. So, are you ready to learn about the Empowered Birth Method, especially as it pertains to castor oil? Well, first, you need to have the right mindset about it. You need to recognize what your birth vision is, first of all. What do you really want your birth to look like? Because castor oil is going to affect that. If you're thinking of having a beautiful and comforting water birth where you're just moving through the waves of contractions, castor oil is not going to do that for you. You're going to be on the toilet. You might even give birth on the toilet. So you need to have a realistic idea of what castor oil is going to do to that beautiful birth vision. Then you also need to recognize any fears that are coming up if you don't do castor oil. So recognizing it's like, okay, they are putting pressure on me to induce. If I don't do castor oil, I'll have to have that induction. You need to work through that fear, and you need to recognize that you actually have way more power than others would have you believe. You are your own best expert, and nobody can really take power away from you. You can only abdicate that power. And, you know, you are a queen. Queens do not just surrender their kingdom. No way. Queens fight, and queens make sure that they have others in their corner to fight for them. They don't have to get into the fray themselves. And so if you happen to have gotten past a lot of that fear and you have your ideal birth vision, the next step is getting that right education, learning about the risks and benefits of castor oil, understanding what that actually looks like. And I'm not just talking about the empirical research data, because a lot of times there's no money to be made in the medical system for studies on castor oil. They can't do it. Ina May Gaskin even talks about how this doesn't actually make any money, as does Rachel Reed. So understanding that a lot of studies being done are usually on the side of, do we need to do more intervention, or does this allow us to basically have something more efficient? And it's pro-intervention, not less intervention. So understanding that, you also need to recognize that the women that choose to go into those trials also don't really have as high an investment in how their birth unfolds, because they may be afraid themselves. They may not understand about true natural birth, and they may also think it's no big deal because they have been programmed to think it's no big deal. Again, the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge is really the first step. And if you haven't gone through it, I highly encourage you to do so, because once you really see it, you can't unsee it. And then you're able to take in more information without that lens of fear, basically derailing everything. So you understand on the medical side about whatever their data says, but you also want to get lived experiences of actual mothers. And you want to also look for the lens of how did this affect somebody who wanted a true natural birth experience? Because if you are doing anything on the outside, you are messing with your physiological birth process. Again, Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, really goes into this about the physiological birth process and how interventions on the outside affect that. So I do encourage you to read that book. It's probably the most important book that anyone who wants to have a true natural birth needs to read, as well as anybody who is supporting moms who are wanting to have that true natural birth, which if you're a birth worker, I'm just going to say it. You have a sworn duty to protect these women, especially if you're a midwife, you're with women. If you're a doula, you can't have your own agenda. And I myself have been very transparent in my own views of how I feel about medical intervention. At the same time, I don't judge my clients. I allow my clients to make their own decisions. Dee Dee made a decision that I probably would not have made myself. However, I was not in Dee Dee's shoes, and I can't exactly speak for what Dee Dee should do. And I don't. I believe Dee Dee is her own best expert. You are your own best expert, and you deserve to decide what education is going to serve you. But wisdom comes from multiple perspectives. And that is why Empowering Moms is all about giving you the information without any attachment to outcome. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. And if you're on the do-it-yourself path, then you're going to want to go down those rabbit holes and find the extra treasures that I am lacing into all of the transcripts and into these videos and additional videos as well, because I want you to have that information, whether you work with me or not. The other thing you need to understand about castor oil is the right environment. If you happen to be in an environment that's not going to facilitate you feeling safe for a physiological birth, but you recognize that you're on the clock and you recognize that you just want to go back into labor, then that is where castor oil is appropriate. Because if you don't feel safe, because you're in the hospital in Dee Dee's case, then what happens is that you don't have those hormones already coming up in your bloodstream. So by doing castor oil, that can help. But if you are in a safe environment, it's perfectly appropriate to just decide, instead of having a really bad time, I'm just going to wait. I'm safe here. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just ride this out. And until I feel that something needs to change, I'm not going to do anything on the outside. And so that was my process when I was going in and out of labor with my daughter, is I was like, it's really nice that I'm having a home birth because I get to decide when I call the midwife here. She doesn't know I'm in labor until I call her. And nobody knows I'm in labor until I let them know. For all they know, I could just be sleeping. They don't know. So I'm not on the clock until I choose to be, or until I call somebody in who has to basically put me on that clock because it is policy. And if they don't, they would get in trouble. So recognizing that, you need to be in that safe environment. The next thing, of course, is the right facilitators. If you've got a midwife who just pushes castor oil on all of her clients because she feels that you need to go into labor by a certain point, that's probably not the best aligned care provider. You want a care provider who is going to actually give you the information you need to make a decision with all of the facts. Not just the ones that allow you to make the choice that they want you to make, which is either to induce or use castor oil so that you get under the clock that they have now set on your birth. Now, inside of In Your Own Time by Dr. Sarah Wickham, she actually says how there's a lot of things that we're doing to address the induction epidemic that aren't working, such as scheduling a C-section instead of an induction, or otherwise trying to basically do membrane sweeps or castor oil or something to get things moving in the time that they are basically saying this is the cutoff and then you have to induce anyway. So that doesn't help. You need to be able to decide on your own when you want to actually speed up labor and what cost is going to be involved in that. And if your facilitator, your childbirth educator, or your doula, or your midwife, or your doctor is pushing castor oil on you and saying that you need to do this or it's an induction, no, there is a third option. Even if they make it sound like it's not an option for you to just wait, if you feel intuitively that you can wait, you can choose to tune those voices out. So you do need the right facilitator. You also need the right support. Your partner needs to be able to stand for you so that when everybody else is trying to get their opinions on the outside, your partner can be like, no, I'm protecting this space. I am protecting my love, and nobody shall pass. Nobody shall get into her head. I am going to be a stand for her. And that is what Dee Dee's partner did for her. He was just absolutely amazing at what he was doing. He was fielding the calls. And then when he returned to the hospital after finding some help for their boys and somebody to watch them, he came in storming and he's just telling the care providers, the nurses, the midwives, the doctors, and it's like, you are not pushing my wife into another C-section. We deliberately stayed away from you and decided to do this on our own for 3 days because we did not trust you. But she is asking for help. She wants to have the epidural. She wants to get some rest. She wants to be assessed, but she is not having a C-section. Let me be clear. And if you try to push her into a C-section, it's not going to go very well for you. We are going to file a complaint. Well, they backed down. And then after Dee Dee had her amazing VBAC, the medical system was like, wait, this is actually possible. A mother who had 3 previous C-sections just had a VBAC at our hospital. This is medical history. And they asked if they could include her story inside of a medical journal for the future. So this again ties into what I said about the birth advocacy report, where you basically need to train the medical system to stop being afraid. Now, you can't train a category 5, but the category 5 will actually lose face and they will be exposed for fear-mongering and manipulating things and coercing people for their own benefits and withholding information, which is actually illegal. It's not informed consent. It's informed coercion at that point. Yeah, I'm pulling no punches with this one because this is important. I believed way back in 2014 when I first learned about the fact that there were category 5s, and I'm like, in order for things to really shift, the birth workers that are in the system are getting basically beaten down. And the moms on the outside don't know this. The way to change any company to serve the consumer, they either have to change or go out of business. So it's change or GTFO of maternity care. So a category 5 will change if the motivation is strong enough. But as long as everybody else is afraid of the category 5, the category 5 continues to basically rule the monopoly, and they're used to stepping on necks in order to get ahead. So they're usually the ones up at the top of the hierarchy coming up with all of the recommendations, and then everybody else who disagrees, they're shut down and they have to toe the line. So there's a lot of birth workers out there that really don't want to push castor oil. They don't want to push you into an induction. They know that your body needs to go into labor in its own time. But because of these category 5s, it's very difficult for them to really fully advocate for you. That is why I say you need to be the birth visionary. You need to be the birth consumer. And you need to basically be the empowered mom for life so that nobody can take your power from you again. So to recap on the empowered birth method, first of all, you need to have the right mindset, the right education, the right environment, the right facilitators, and the right support. And so now I'm just going to let you know how to get the empowered birth method is really simple. I am not here to gatekeep information. In fact, I want you to have all of the information. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. And because of the transformations that I give my clients, I know that I can turn something around that was maybe 6 weeks away from the mom giving birth to her suddenly standing in her power where she had been powerless before. In 15 minutes, I can get on a call with somebody and take them from being afraid of standing up against the system to suddenly deciding that they're going to have a home birth that they were told they weren't allowed to have. Moms who have been told that they're not allowed to have a VBAC have had VBACs with just having a conversation with me. But I can't work with just anyone. And I really do need to protect my time. I'm focused on the empowered birth movement, and it is a steep price tag to work with me. So this is basically path number 3. It's called premium coaching. And what we do in that is I have mistress minds of about 3 to 5 students that come in, these empowered moms who want to go and transform every aspect of their lives beyond birth. Then there's also the high level premium coaching clients who I'm custom tailoring their own empowered birth journey and empowered mom journey so they can have that transformation. And then I also sometimes do workshops or live master classes where you can actually get in a hot seat and be coached live in a group format. But again, my time is so limited to be able to do that. So those are all paid services. I don't want to leave you behind. And that is why I have also opened up 2 other paths to getting the empowered birth method without that price tag and without that time commitment. And those are self-study and the do-it-yourself path. You're already on the do-it-yourself path. You know what the value is here. You know you can go anywhere. You know that the resources are all available for you. You know that the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more you can uncover. So all I ask is that you like, share, subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms who need it. Because a drop in the ocean creates ripples, many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. And if you are helping to get the message out, that will also help the empowered birth movement, even if you are not funding it directly by being a paying client. Then there's a middle path here because, sometimes it helps to have a little bit more structure. And if you're someone who loves to go through a course, then that is where I have self-study. There are 2 tiers within self-study as well. So I have the complete self-study where you get a course, you put your name and email in, and you get your empowered birth workshop is one of them. I will have more in the future. I also have another self-study path within that where you don't have to put a name and email in at all. You don't have to subscribe to the newsletter. And that is the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. There will be more of those as well. If you want something a little shorter, then you can also get the teasers when I put them on my Instagram. Just go to @EmpoweringMomsBirth. So recognizing that when I do these challenges, I really do want you to do the work. That is the key with self-study. Implementation is the final piece. Technically, my book, Your Empowered Birth, is also self-study. Inside chapters 6 and 7 of the book, how to get the birth you want the first time and how to heal and get the birth you want the second time, what I've done is I've basically taken all 5 of those pillars that I mentioned, and then there's specific questions that you want to answer to be able to get that transformation and have your own roadmap. It's me coaching you without the price tag and without me actually coaching you. Now, with self-study by itself, you don't have any extra support. You can always email the team and we will get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. However, you do not get as much as if you were self-study VIP. Self-study VIP allows you to also have us look at your homework directly. So you send in your workbook or pieces of your workbook, and then we look over the whole thing and we see what's missing. And if it's something that we can just send you another resource for, we'll do that. But you also, with Self-Study VIP, because you are paying for it, you get something else called a laser coaching call. This is basically the 15 minutes that I mentioned where I usually get on with my clients, and maybe they are about to go into a really scary appointment and tell their care provider no, and I basically lift them up and help them. So with the laser coaching call, though, I'm again, basically, I've had your homework looked over, and I see that there's a little bit of a disconnect between what you want and what you're actually saying. And I'm like, okay, here's where you could fall into the trap. Let's get on this call so we can work through that so that you can move forward in this. And then it's up to you whether you decide to enroll in any of our programs or if you just want to continue with self-study. We are here for you no matter what. I am committed to you having an empowered birth, no matter what your budget, no matter what your time constraints, whether you work with me directly or not, or get any of my programs, just like, share, subscribe to this channel, and pay it forward. Now, before we recap, I also want to let you know, because you are on the do-it-yourself path, about the rule of three. So you've come this far, and now you understand about the pitfalls of castor oil. You've heard a story of Dee Dee, one of my clients, who actually chose to use castor oil so that she could get her VBAC after 3 cesareans. And you also know about the empowered birth method. But there's so much. I know there is so much that you just went through, and your mind must be absolutely blown by now. And you might even be thinking, wait, what was that thing she said at the beginning? Because this is a long class. And that's why I said to take notes. But the thing about the rule of three is that you first watch the video in full, or take a class, or read a book, and you get the overview. You know what's now in it. You know that there were some really good pieces in there. But if you go back and you watch a second time, or you read a book a second time, or you read a transcript a second time, you'll uncover some aha moments that you may not have noticed before. Because instead of just getting that overview of information, you now can curate it to your own specific situations. And you're like, oh, this piece makes more sense now because I went through and I understood the rest of the process. Before, I kind of overlooked it, but now I know what I'm looking for. And then if you go through the third time, that is when the magic really happens, because it's almost like the fairy tale. You know, the rule of three. They attempted something the first time, it didn't work. Second time, it didn't work. But the third time's the charm. They learned the lesson, and then they had the transformation. Well, the rule of three is just like that. In fact, I have another video. It's not through the Empowered Birth series. It's actually on my personal channel, Carly Bonderud Uncensored, where I basically talk about the rule of three for success. And I also tell a fairy tale story of the golden bird. So you can check that. Again, if you want to check it out, it is inside of the transcript of this video. All you have to do is click that transcript, and the link is embedded in there. So the rule of three, again, you've got, oh my gosh, I can now bring my own magic to this, and I got the lesson. Then the final piece is integration, how you are able to take those pieces and make them your own and apply them to your own empowered birth journey. And that is why I say that if you're going to do the do-it-yourself path, you're then creating your own self-study course, essentially. You are taking the pieces that are going to fit for you, and you're creating your own self-study course and coming up with the action steps that you want to do yourself. If you choose the self-study path, then I have action steps already for you based on what helped my clients and what helped me and what I've seen work out in the empowered birth community and outside of the empowered birth community to get those true natural births. Because I'm constantly looking for those traps. I'm constantly looking for those things that people miss, the loopholes. It's one of my superpowers. And because of that, I can then reflect it back to you and show you what's missing. Because again, fish can't see the water they swim in. And if you really like to have a little bit of extra support, then my intuition and the intuition of my coaching queens, who also work in my team as well. We basically, when we're laser coaching you, we're looking for your own magnificence and brilliance that you may not see. You may not see the loophole that we see. You may not see the path that we see. You might say, I think it's hopeless. And I'll be like, but if you lost all your faith, I couldn't be here helping you. And you have come to me. And now I'm going to show you your own magnificence, Cinderella. So again, the coaching, again, is premium. And I don't work with everyone. My coaching queens don't work with everyone. We are very protective of our time. We're all moms. And so that's why you've got the self-study to show us that you can do the work. And you also have the do it yourself, and you can choose to go and get any of our workbooks. If you do have questions about that, you can always email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And we would be happy to assist you and tell you about which self-study program or workbook is going to most benefit you in the moment for what you need. Because I don't want you to have to go through a rabbit hole of Google search and get the wrong information. I don't want you to have to sift through a million different birth influencers and not know which side is right or wrong and try to make sense of it. You are your own best expert. So let me show you how you are. Okay? So we have covered a lot inside of this video, and let's just quickly recap on what we learned. So with castor oil, you need to understand again, it irritates your bowels. It is not a gentle process for induction. However, it can be useful if you need to get things going at the end of your pregnancy and you've been going in and out of labor and baby's ready to come out. It can also irritate your baby's bowels and cause meconium, which could then lead to additional interventions. Castor oil can undermine your confidence that you can handle a physiological birth because now you've also got the pain of these contractions plus the cramping from your intestines. It's not fun. And you really don't need to do that. You will go into labor on your own. You don't have to be on somebody else's timeline. This is really an intervention. This is a backup plan. And if you do want to know more about that, of course, you can go into the transcript of this video or ask questions. Send a question to hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com if you are not already subscribed to the newsletter. And if you are subscribed to the Empowered Birth newsletter, then you just hit reply to any of our weekly emails. Okay. So thank you again for watching. Next week, we are tackling trap number 7, the hospital. So stay tuned for that. And remember, whether you are birthing a baby, birthing a creative project, birthing a business, or rebirthing yourself, Empowered Birth is here for you. And if you continue to go deeper with empowering moms, the more treasure that you will uncover. Please like, share, subscribe to this channel, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms who need it. A drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves. Enough waves can change the tide. Every birth can and should be a beautiful, empowering experience. And I am committed to you having an empowered birth. So have a happy, empowered birth journey. And I will see you next week. Namaste.